Hey YouTube, it's Kel. I am going to do a podcast tonight, a brief one, but it's on the subject of what we call the shadow side of ourselves. And this topic was originally really talked about primarily by Carl Jung, that's Jung. And he must have started talking about it. He did, I think, with a little bit with Freud in the, I believe it was the late 1800s, early 1900s. And I wanted to talk about it because in therapy, sometimes it's an interesting conversation sometimes to have with people, especially because the whole point of, psychotherapy and being a therapist is a lot of times to bring unconscious patterns that people have into their awareness, unconscious traits, anything that, like Oprah always says, life is a teacher to us. And it's like, what is it trying to teach you? A lot of times, some things can be hidden in what is called your shadow side that you just might want to be encouraged to look at in order to increase your self-acceptance. And I'll explain some reasons why, but we're always better off accepting, fully unconditionally loving ourselves, even if the trait is, quote, bad, because you can't work on anything if you are not aware of it, if you don't accept it first. So let's talk about that first. So first, what is the shadow side? Originally, when Carl Jung described it, he basically said it was the idea that we all have a kind of public persona. And this is, the older I get, the more true what he was talking about is, in the sense that we all have, we like to, in public, put our best foot forward. Also, even just around everybody else, we have an ideal of what it is to be, quote, a good person or a good us, around everybody else. I don't want to say a mask, but the word I would use is persona. And it's like who you think you are in your conscious mind. And what traits, what personality, character traits, human being traits define you uniquely as that persona and consciously. What have you come to understand about yourself? So he talks about how with every person, and I have yet to meet a person who is fully aware of all of the stuff in their shadow. I feel like it's a lifelong journey for us to uncover what is in our shadow side, no matter how much we want to, we are capable of like admitting our stuff to ourselves. I think it's an ongoing revelation that we have, because the shadow side is, so here it is, the unconscious kind of repressed or suppressed sides of ourselves that we don't like to see. So it's like the unconscious traits that we deem or deemed in our past as unacceptable. So I'm going to give you an example. For some people who grew up in a household where they constantly said, stop crying, don't be a sissy, I'll use that word. A lot of people may have shoved into their shadow side sadness. So maybe being sad is unacceptable to them, right? So, or like, if a parent was really critical or something, they may think that they're very accepting, but they don't understand, like they may have shoved their own critical side, into their shadow side, whatever they deem as like unacceptable. I'll give you examples of traits and sides of people that a lot of times you find in the shadow side. So in the shadow side, you find a lot of times like things like sadness, sometimes fears, anger. So that's my cat, if you can hear my cat saying hi. So any other, I'm trying to think of, there's a lot that you could, egotism, selfishness, things that we don't like to admit to ourselves. And here is the kicker that he said, if you're not aware, the more you're not, another part that might be in the shadow side for a lot of people is a sexual side, because they may have grown up in a household where, I don't know, sex was treated as, quote, bad, and so they shoved it into a shadow side, but maybe they have certain preferences or, and so they just deemed them as like, oh, inappropriate, unacceptable. So I'm going to shove that over here. Well, the problem with that is that what Carl Jung says, and what I have also seen to be true, is the bigger the shadow side, whatever that trait is, and the bigger the uncovered, repressed stuff is, the more powerful it is in driving your life. So, if you, it is like a car, right? You want to be the driver in your own car. And if you have repressed stuff, sometimes you have passengers, whatever. But the stronger the repressed side, the stronger the shadow side, sometimes it can overtake the driver and be the driver in your life occasionally when it gets to be strong enough, right? And when you have not dealt with it, when you've not acknowledged it, when you've not accepted it, when you've not brought it into the light of acceptance and really said, hey, that is a side of me, whether good or bad, you're not judging it, but you just are like accepting it in yourself, right? So this also can be seen. So one way you can know a lot of times what's in your shadow side is when a very obvious way is projecting all over the place to other people. So you're basically denying that trait in yourself, and then you project it onto everybody else. So let's just say selfishness as an example, right? We all have some element of selfishness sometimes. And the more you disagree with that, the more you probably are not aware of yourself, right? So, and if you don't acknowledge that in yourself, the more you're going to call everybody else around you selfish all the time. So, and it is like the less you know yourself, the less you know your own stuff, the more you're going to point the finger at everybody else for those bad traits, that you have not accepted in yourself. If you hear that, that's still my cat. So she's out the door, but, baby, no. Okay. So basically the idea that Carl Jung talked about is like, you want to have your conscious self bring the shadow side, shed light essentially on the shadow side and bring it in for acceptance. So you want unconditional love for that trait, whatever it is, whether it's sadness, whether it's, even anger. Like if you don't accept your angry side, you will be driven by it and you will project it all over the place to call other people drama or, so emotional, or, it's really because you're not accepting that side, the angry side in yourself, so whatever it is. Oh my God, my cats are going a little crazy. But anyways, so my point is that Carl Jung talked about the more we can just acknowledge those traits in ourselves, the more we are conscious of them, the less they will drive our lives. And so that's one thing, if you're in therapy, I encourage you to do with your therapist is talk about whatever shadow side you have. You may feel shame about certain sexual things, and you may find that once you talk about them and bring them into the light of consciousness, that the shame goes away and the power of them go away. Sometimes things like some people have obsessions about certain things, and when they they try to shove them into the shadow side, but when they bring them into the light of consciousness and accept them, the power is taken out of them because they're not pushing them away. Another example is sometimes I will see the happiest people that push sadness away, right? And then I'm going to take it a little dark place. Sorry, suicide warning. But then you see or hear about like them committing suicide and you're like, where did that come from? It is highly possible that they had sadness in their shadow side, but we're afraid to go there because a lot of times people think, depression's like a black pit, and if I go into it, I will never get out of it, which is, by the way, not true. Almost all feelings you will come out of at some point. I mean, they are made to be transient or changing, and like feelings are like the weather, but if you repress sadness, yes, you might have more sadness to deal with when you tap into it. So it feels that way at first, like overwhelming, like an avalanche, like, oh my gosh, I've denied this for a long time. So there's a lot there, you know, but it's like grief. And so, but you will come out of it if you deal with it for long enough, you process it long enough. I can't guarantee that. Obviously there's the exception, but 99% of the time, because feelings are meant to change, you will have some transitory state. Our bodies are not meant to stay in one feeling state. You know, we are meant to be a gamut of different feelings. So basically, Carl Jung's point is the more you shed light and acceptance and unconditional love on the dark sides of you that you are ashamed of, afraid of, don't want to look at, the more you bring light to them, talk about it in a safe, accepting place, the less power they will have in your life, the more control you will have over those sides of yourself, and the less judgment you will have towards everybody else, because you will understand that you have that trait, that side too, in yourself, you know. And if I were to psychoanalyze the country for a sec, you know, that's that hilarious thing about the division that we are seeing these days, is I just feel like it's this huge lack of us understanding our shadow sides. Because for, you know, you've heard the saying, probably for every finger you point, there's 3 pointing back at you. And I feel like anybody who is constantly talking about how bad that group is, or that person is, or whatever trait they're throwing on that person, is clearly not in touch with that trait in themselves. Because we all have, it's my opinion, some level of all the negative traits in us. So the more you judge someone else, the more you have not seen or looked into your own heart, I feel like, to just say, hey, like, we might have them to differing degrees, and maybe different on different days and different seasons or whatever, but I can relate because I know I have that in my heart, you know? So our country definitely needs shadow work. And hopefully we get there in the future. But my hope is, it's a very interesting, amazing concept. I feel like the unconditional love and acceptance that it's meant to bring, in terms of just bringing whatever you feel kind of ashamed of, or whatever you feel is not acceptable, and really bringing it to the light of acceptance with both yourself and in a safe environment with someone else. It really reduces the power of a lot of things that we repress. So I hope tonight, my hope is for you, that if and when you do shadow work, it's in a safe environment, that you end up loving and accepting yourself more, and that you end up feeling healthier and happier, and that whatever that negative thing is has less control over you in your life. And I wish you health and happiness and healing, and I will see you next time.